Hey Board Game Geek and YouTube, it's been a long time but I'm finally back, and hopefully to make up for it I've got a review of a really interesting game, Quantum, here. Now let me tell you a little story about Quantum. Originally I first heard about it on Rodney Smith's Watch It Played, and I started watching the video and about a minute and a half in said, I'm not buying this game. Your ships are dice, and you just roll them to see what you get, and I thought that sounded kind of silly, and I was not interested. Then on a whim, I watched the Shut Up and Sit Down review for the game, because even though I wasn't interested in the game, those guys are really funny, so I watched it. Then I went, maybe there's something here, and went back and rewatched the How to Play video and the actual gameplay on Watch It Played and said, maybe this is a game I want to check out. It doesn't exactly fall into a huge 4X sort of game, but there is combat. There, is exploiting the different abilities that your race can get. There is expanding your empire, and maybe you're not exploring the board because it's all available initially, but there is a bit of a 4X feel kind of combined with a puzzle element. Let me show you what's in the game and how it works and see if maybe it intrigues you. Usually like to mention, good functional insert. Thank you. I would like to appreciate games that actually do that. Let's also look at the board. Here we have the game set up for a 3-player game, and each player starts with 3 of their ships, or dice, out onto the board, and 1 of their quantum cubes. In a way, this game is kind of a race. The game ends immediately as soon as a player gets all of their quantum cubes out. Now, there are many different board setups in the game, and the board setup, if we look in the rulebook here for a 2, 3, or 4-player game, is all basically the same number of spaces available, just a different number on the planets. And the number on the planet also corresponds with the number of spaces available to place a quantum cube. So on all of our home planets we're able to place 1 quantum cube, but on this 8 planet we can potentially place 2, and then 3 on the 9, and so on, and then there are bigger numbers also. And the game does come with a lot of 2-sided tiles that are available, and nice thick tiles too. So the thing is, you can only place 1 quantum cube on a planet. You can't place 2 of your own. But 2 different players can get a quantum cube on a planet. And if we had a situation like this, where a player had a total of 8 around a planet, and the number of the planet there was 8, and it has to match it exactly, they could use 2 of their 3 actions on a turn to place another one of their quantum cubes onto the planet. Now, they have to be in orbital positions. If you look closely at the board, the positions orthogonally, basically, of the planet are highlighted a little bit. So they would not be able to place a cube on the planet if they were like that. Also, if another player was there, any other player's totals don't count towards your total, only yours do, so they would still be able to place a cube on the planet if they had 2 actions. Now, on a turn, you can take 3 actions, and being able to set yourself up so you can use 2 of them in order to take over a planet is a key thing. Now, what you can do on a turn, basically, is to change a ship. So, for example, I could take an action, re-roll this, and I have to get a different number. If I get the same number, I can keep re-rolling. I can bring a ship out. If one of my ships was destroyed, it goes down on my player board here, and we'll talk about the player board in a minute here, but it goes into my scrapyard here, and we would keep all the cubes we have to get out, and it can have a variable number depending on the board we're playing and how long we want the game to be. So if a ship gets destroyed, I re-roll it, it goes in my scrapyard with that number, and I can take an action to put it back out onto a planet where I have a cube. I can activate a ship as one of my actions, and ships can move, potentially attack, and also use their special ability once per turn. And then I can also research. Now that's on our player board back down here again. If we get we can use as many actions of these as we want. If we get our research up to 6, then at the end of the turn we're going to get a special card, and we'll talk about those. Anytime that we place a cube on a planet, we will get a special card for each cube we place at the end of our turn, and if our research reaches 6. So in order to do combat, we have to activate a ship. I could use an action to activate this too. Now each ship represents both how far it can move, and also how powerful it is in combat. But in this game, the lower numbers are better. So in this case, this 2 that I have over here could move 2 spaces. 1 would have to use an action as 2 to move kind of halfway into the space with that ship. Then each player would roll a die, so if the black die was the attack die and white was defense, we'd roll them, and then we would add them up. In this case, I would have a 6, while the defender would have a 5. Defender is going to win that battle because they have a lower number, and I am simply repelled and nothing happens. If, however, the attacker wins, then this player would be destroyed. They'd re-roll, go back into their shipyard with whatever they re-rolled. I'd have a choice to move in or to stay back. At this point, because I destroyed an enemy ship, my dominance would go up. And that is this die here. Every time one of your ships destroys another ship, your dominance would go up 1 to 2. If your ship is destroyed because someone else attacked you, because remember, your ships aren't destroyed when you attack, but only when someone else attacks you, your dominance goes back down. If your dominance ever reaches 6, you get to instantly place a cube anywhere on the board, which is very powerful because you can place it far away from where you're at. To bear in mind is that attackers actually win ties in this game, so attacking is encouraging. You can't be destroyed, and you win ties. So on the player board here, we see all of the different abilities of the ships. We see all the different actions available, and then the advanced cards step where we get advanced cards from either one of these piles, either gambit cards or tactic cards. The black gambit cards happen right away. The white tactic cards are a special ability that we would actually place into our, underneath our player board like this. Now, each of the 4 races in the game are the same, basically. They just have slightly different art and different colored dice, obviously. But we build our races by these tactic cards that we pick up. Now, we'll look at some of those cards in a minute, but one thing to keep in mind, each player also has 2 dice that basically start off the board. They're not in their shipyard either. Those dice are able to be put out onto the board if a player, let's say, takes one of these cards. There are several of these in the Gambit deck, and this card would basically allow you to put out a ship into a place where you have a quantum cube. So that's how we expand our fleet. Just go through a 6, if we have it on the board, we can, as a free action, re-roll this. Normally that costs an action, but a 6 can use their special ability to just re-roll into something else. Now, once I do that, I can't use this ship's, even though it's changed its number, I've still used that ship's special ability, so I cannot use the 2 special ability if I were to try to use that later. Now, the 4 can actually move up or down into a 5 or a 3, which is obviously very important when trying to get exact numbers. Now the 5, and there's Cinder, a 5 can actually move diagonally. Normally a ship could move 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. A 5 can actually move diagonally. You can't move through other ships, including your own. You can't move through planets, but in some ways the 5 can actually move further than the 6. Now, the 3 has one of the most interesting abilities. It can warp with any other ship. Alright, I might have to save my quantum cube, so just hang on 1 second. So, for example, if later in the game I had a setup like this, I could activate my 3 special ability. In general, special abilities don't actually cost an activation, they're free. The 2, which we'll talk about in just a second, you do have to activate the ship, and the 5, because you're moving the ship, obviously you have to activate it. But the other ships, you can use your special ability without actually using an action. So, for example, I could use my 3 special ability here and swap it with my 1. By doing that, my 1 is now in a better position to attack that 3 if I wanted to, because it can now reach it, and it's a lower number, so it's better in combat. And the 1 special ability is to be able to do a free move and attack. It has to be able to attack, though. You can't just use an extra move. The last thing I'm going to talk about here is the 2's action. And again, like I said, for a 2, you actually have to activate the ship. But whenever the game refers to adjacent spaces, they're talking about up, down, left, right. If they're talking about surrounding spaces, it includes diagonally. So you might think that if I wanted to attack, let's say, the blue player, I wouldn't be able to do so in this situation. But the 2 special abilities, it can pick up any ship in any of your own ships in a surrounding area and carry it with it. So I could move 2 spaces, 1, 2, and then drop off this ship in any surrounding area. So I could drop this one off here. And then I could use my 1 special ability to move in and attack. So I've only used 1 action, but I've managed to get my really powerful in combat ship up there and attack with only 1 action. So the 1s, although they are not very mobile, there are ways to use them very effectively. You get cubes out in order to win the game, but also to get these cool cards. So there's all kinds of different stuff. These are going to give all different kinds of special abilities, and these, again, are going to have instant effects that trigger right away. Really quickly, these Gambit cards here give you instant effects, like another turn with 2 actions, add 2 dominance, get more ships out, even destroy other players' cards that they have out. And these cards can give you all kinds of interesting combinations. Maybe you get free research and you get cards quicker, at 4 instead of 6 research and things like that. You can blow up other players' ships and your own in combat, place anywhere. You can get cool combinations where you get +2 when you win a battle, and also -0 when your ship gets destroyed. So you can have it where you force players to reroll ships. You can get dominance when you are defenders and things like that. So there's all different kinds of interesting combinations where you can try to win the game through research or through dominance based on what your race gets. So what do I think about Quantum? Pretty much this is the rule book. I mean, yes, there are things you might have to look up, that there's more to it, and it's a well-written rule book with examples and things, but most of what you need to know for the game is right here on your player board, and that's brilliant. Sure, you don't start out with a special ability, but you will have a unique race by the end of the game, so I don't mind that not starting with a special ability so much. Now, the game also comes with this really interesting two-sided thing with other suggested maps. And I'm sure you can find more online for the number of players you have. And this is important because there's one thing I really didn't like about this game. And I'll talk about that first and we'll get into what I did like about it. I played it with two players first and 3 players, really enjoyed it. Then I played it with 4 players on the base map. And the base map is that 3x3 grid, and basically you're increasing the number of spaces available to put cubes onto the individual planets. But since you can't put 2 of your own on a planet, and there's 3 other players on the board, it's really hard to end the game. Because if you get to the point where you only have 1 or 2 cubes left and other players are behind, well, they're going to gang up on you. They can attack you. So it's really easy to stop other players from winning in a 4-player game. Even if someone attacks and loses, there are 2 other players who may be able to stop you. And later in the game, especially if people have expanded their fleets, it gets really tight. And the game just kind of dragged on a little too long. This in general is a decently quick, I don't want to say light game, because there's a puzzly element to it, but nice midweight game. So I played again another time with 4 players where we used the Great Expanse. And here's the thing, if you like combat, if you want the game to be longer, if that's interesting to you, then you can do that. And one thing I do like about this game, getting to what I do like, is the scalability of it. You can vary the number of spaces available, the planets available, and you can make up your own maps if you want. So by using this one where we were playing in a 4x4 grid, instead, it was a wide open space and the game ended fairly quickly for a 4-player game. Because, the focus of the game is kind of balancing that puzzle element of using your ship's special abilities and good combinations, getting the right cards so that you can use your abilities to get the right numbers around the planets. And then the combat is also fun too. But I feel like the combat is kind of the weaker part of the game, so if it gets too combat focused and too tight of a game, it personally drags on too long for me. Those special cards, those special abilities will make a big difference. But that game we played with 4 players, nobody was really able to use those special abilities because we had a couple of those cards that take those special abilities away. So there are almost none of those cards out, even late in the game. So people couldn't use those abilities to potentially get more moves and more actions that would allow them to finish the game. So my biggest problem, is that it can't, if it's too tight, the game becomes too long and it drags and it's too combat focused. But the balance of that puzzle element with I'm building my own race, none of the components of this are as in-depth as like Eclipse. You're not, modifying each one of your ships. You don't have this whole feel, this vast economic empire, but it gives you enough of that feel of I have my own unique race, I have my own unique play style, and also instead of, the economic aspect of Eclipse, you've got that puzzle element. So, combining those things actually really works in this game. And, if you find the right board size for the way you and your group wants to play, this is a really interesting game. And despite being turned off by your ships or dice and you roll them and that's what you get, there's really, this is one of those games that I think the word elegant is a good word. It's not overly complicated, the rules are pretty much on the player board, but how you're going to play and how you're going to trigger, and when you see players go, oh, wait, if I use this ability, then this ability, and then take this action, I can get way across the board and stop you, or I can get into position with free action so that I can get a cube on this turn, which will let me get this card, which will let me do this next turn. And, when those combinations start to click, that's when this game really starts to work. So if you were like me, don't let the, your ships or dice turn you off, there's really quite a bit here for, an interesting sort of hybrid game if that's your sort of thing. I didn't trust you originally, Rodney, and I apologize. Alright, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.